Hello, everyone. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for joining in today's session. We can get started. As more people join us, I think, yeah, we've just kept the rooms open. So, uh, thank you again for joining us. As some of you all might be aware, our session today is a part of our ongoing digital readiness series. As a part of the series, we've already conducted two sessions. Uh, and this is the third session that we're having in collaboration with Platform Commons. Today, our session is going to be on digital storytelling. And this was also a session that a lot of nonprofits and a lot of you had also requested. It's super relevant and I think we're all going to have gain a lot of insights to the session today. So before I hand it over to our speakers, I will quickly introduce them. So we have Prashant and Satyam, who are co-founders of Platform Commons. I'd also like to say, in case any of y'all missed any of our previous sessions, you all can write to us at partnernetwork@satwa.co.in. My colleague will just put it on the chat. So we usually record all of our sessions. We'd be happy to share that as well as the resources for your reference. So quickly introducing our first speaker, we have Prashant Mehra. As mentioned, he's the co-founder and CEO of Platform Commons. He's a chief architect. His focus areas include smallholder farmer agriculture, community-owned supply chains, and building networked marketplaces. For the next 10 years, his focus is to provide quality software to governments and nonprofits that play a key role in scaling their impact. He has over 30 years of experience in software industry and 12 years of those 30 were in the impact sector. He has helped build the world's first goods marketplace, the world's first professional service marketplace, and a multi-tenanted end-to-end platform for airline sector. He was also awarded the Social Innovator of the Year 2020 by Schwab Foundation for building digital platforms as public assets. He's also on the board of UN Live, directing their efforts on digitally engaging young people across the globe on the topic of climate change. Welcome, Prashant. Thank you for facilitating our session today. We look forward to hearing and learning more from you. We also have our second speaker today, Satyam Gambhir. He's the co-founder of Platform Commons. So he leads building products in the area of climate, education, and civic engagement. These products collectively serve over 6 million people in India. Satyam has over 15 years of experience in building platforms for the impact sector. He's worked with governments and nonprofits towards deploying these platforms for their beneficiaries. He was awarded India's 40 Under 40 Leaders Award by India CSR Forum in 2021. Before this, Satyam has also extensively worked in the areas of strategy consulting, program management. He's also supported to build large-scale software products and platforms. Very warm welcome to you as well, Satyam. And thank you for facilitating our session today. Um, just a few housekeeping rules. So one, our session is being recorded. We'll share it with all the participants, including the session decks or any other resources that the speakers use. We will share that post the session. In case, so our session today is divided into several sections. We will break in the middle for questions, but also feel free to leave any of your questions in the chat. Our speakers will pick them up as and when you all do post your queries. And in case any of you all can switch on your cameras, we'd be happy to also engage with you. So yeah, over to you, Satyam and Prashant. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Meenu. Good evening, everyone. So let's try my introduction one more time. It's a storytelling session, and maybe such a dry introduction, which we did on that PPT, is not befitting of a storytelling session. And then we can ask ourselves this question that we'll do a quick poll. Which one did you like better? That one or the one I'm going to do? And then we'll do a poll. We'll hang on to the poll. Let's see. So my name is Prashant Mehra. I just turned 50. So I joined the Indian IT services run in the year 1995 after graduating from
I think we just lost Prashant. He should be joining in a couple of seconds. Let me just check with
Sorry, who did you lose?
Sorry, Prashant, we couldn't hear you for a couple of seconds.
Okay, okay, fine. So, when did you lose me, Minu, so I can?
No, I think from the beginning, Prashant, you were just starting to introduce yourself and then we couldn't hear you.
All right. Okay. So sorry about this, folks. So they were saying that I joined the Indian IT sector in the year 95, and it was a smallish. We were just starting out as what today is a $250 billion industry was a ragtag affair of 3,000 people. So they're all of 3,000 software engineers in the country at that point in time. Today they are 30 lakh. I grew with the sector, and as so I remember I joined Infosys in 95, and Infosys that now employs some 6 lakh people was all of 280 people. So you can imagine the growth the sector has seen. And I was lucky enough to grow with the sector. So before I know it, I was with a company called Mindtree. I was based out of London and running their platform business. And life was good, good personal success, professional success. And then one fine day, I still remember this, November 2008. I am waiting for a visa stamping to go to a meeting in Germany. And I'm sitting in a Starbucks. And that day, for some reason, I wanted to I was curious about global wealth distribution. So I started Googling. So, simple, harmless words, 3 words I typed on Google: global wealth distribution. 4 hours later, I was in cold sweat as I'm seeing how the wealth distribution is just getting more and more and more skewed over the passing years. I'm sure all of us have heard this phrase called the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And that is the phrase, that stared back at me when I was doing the research on global wealth distribution, and a question popped up. So, what are you doing about it? Answer could have been anything, that you're doing nothing about it. But the answer that popped in my head immediately was, you are helping the rich get richer by giving your talent to the rich. It's a very, very difficult answer to live with. This eventually will lead me uh, taking a sabbatical for 2 years, uh, coming back to India, going to a village in North Bihar, where I stayed for 2 years in a village called Saurat near Madhubani, and started work with local farmers, etc., 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 etc. And I can, go on for ideas not to tell you, my life story, but I ended up working with the farmers. We started with 5 landless labor, ended up with a cooperative of 700 farmers and a 4 times increase in income, set up local aromatic oil processing centers platforms for the country. And that's how the whole initiative of Platform Commons started, where we said technology can really make a difference. And some more details one can fit in, but clearly between the two introductions, I like this one. Between what Minu said, and I had only written and sent it to Minu, so not her fault. And I'm hoping that you will also agree that this was more interesting, and maybe some of you heard what I said, as opposed to just, I don't think anybody paid any attention to the previous one. So why do we still write it like that? So let's hear from people before we jump into why is it so difficult? Why do we instinctively tend to fall back on dry data facts and tell what we want to tell as opposed to really find out what people want to hear and what will be more acceptable, what will be more interesting. So anyways, so with this, let's jump into today's session. I'll start by sharing my screen on digital storytelling. One small uh, caveat. There is only little bit of digital in digital storytelling. It's largely storytelling. The story is a story. So what we'll do today is we're going to spend some time in going through storytelling per se, will be half of the session. We'll take examples and then we'll get down to some frameworks. So we'll take some good story examples, then we'll go down to frameworks that can help you stitch your story, and then we'll talk about how data can add credibility to your story. Now, uh, very, very quick about us. So we are Platform Commons. We are attempting to use technology to help societal problems. We are at it for the last 12 years, starting 2012 till today. We have solutions in a variety of domains in agriculture, in volunteering, education, skilling, so on and so forth. And all of these have been built using very, very closely with the grassroots communities themselves. Because otherwise, how else do you really know what people want? So it's been a very bottom-up grassroots approach and not a really top-down building. And you can check us out at platformcommons.org and digitalcommons.io to get a more bigger sense of what we do. We collectively serve 64 lakh beneficiaries through 5 state governments and 100 plus social enterprises that use our solutions. And as you can see, there are people that use the solutions we build pretty much across the country down to Lakshadweep and Andaman. We have people who are using it, I think, for education solutions and so on. Places. Today's discussion about stories. So let's focus on the three cores: the why, the what, and the who. So imagine a scenario where you have a story ready. You want to tell about your organization, about a project, about a challenge, whichever way you're telling it. And you've acquired your target audience. They are sitting, they are watching, reading, as the case may be. So let's put your story through these three questions. Listening to your story, will it answer the question for your reader? Why should I care about what you are saying? Suppose you manage to make them care about what you are saying, whatever the issue is. The next question in their mind will be, okay, now I understand the issue, but what exactly is this NGO doing to solve this issue? Are you communicating that clearly enough? And the third thing, very interestingly, the next thing is people will start seeing you in the position of a hero if you're seeing that, if they see that you are able to solve a problem. So the next question they'll have is, okay, so this looks like a nice heroic endeavor, but exactly who is the hero in this? And I'll elaborate on each one of them in why these are important questions and how getting the right answer to these questions will give you the basic structure to frame your narrative. You have to keep in mind that largely left to themselves, nobody wants to listen to us. It is our job to try find their attention. people's attention is very sparse. Left to themselves, they will watch a TikTok video or some very, very quick, mindless content consumption. We will all talk about serious matters. So that's, I think, one of the fundamental reasons also why it becomes important to make things interesting. And let's start to make things interesting by these three answering these questions. Why should I care? I'm going to play a video and then we will do a small discussion on it. It's by one of our partners, Make a Difference.
पैसा कहाँ है पैसा बोल जल्दी सवाल करती है मेरे से हैं नहीं देगी मेरे को पैसा हैं पैसा नहीं देगी ना तू
Recording in progress.
पैसा कहाँ है पैसा बोल जल्दी सवाल करती है मेरे से हैं नहीं देगी मेरे को पैसा हैं पैसा नहीं देगी ना तू नहीं बेटा हम यहाँ नहीं रहेंगे मम्मी के पास जाएगी ना हाँ तो मम्मी के पास चलेंगे ना हम मम्मी के पास जाएगी तो हाथ चलाना पड़ेगा ना चुप चुप हो गया बात करने को मना किया था ना तेरे को चल पता नहीं है
हवा धीरे आना
क्या कर रही है डायरेक्ट से
कुछ सपने दे जाना
चला जल्दी करने का है घर जाने का है अभी
नन्ही परी सोने
So, yeah, so we'll take a pause and do watch in your it's another 3 or 4 minutes, and then there are pauses where you can take actions, and it'll tell you what next action to take, and so on and so forth. The whole purpose of showing this video is that it very clearly established to the viewer who is not familiar with the issue. It does a great job at building empathy. Or even to the viewer who's familiar with the issue. A lot of people, a lot of donors, a lot of public you will be reaching out to talk about child labor, to talk about runaway children, to talk about other forms of uh, uh, atrocities, which we all see. They are familiar, but you're putting the emotion, you're bringing the emotion out right up front to establish the why should you care, and one can go through. The good, interesting part about this is that in this why, and we'll see it later also, that how it's very important to give choices and actions in our storyline. So here there was an action to say, click here and it'll say call 100. There'll be another one, there'll be a helpline, a child helpline 1622, and there'll be another action where you can make a donation to an orphanage, another action where you can do a volunteering with an orphanage, and many other things. So it helps you not build a victim mindset or a bechara mindset, but it actually helps you build agency by providing choices and actions. But we'll come back to that a bit. So once you've established the topic of the why, let us go to the topic of the what. One of the places where we very often don't do a good job is telling in very simple words, uncomplicated words, very bare minimum data points, than inundate the reader, the audience with data, or the nuances of a solution. Tell it in simple words using simple data. What is the solution to a problem? So we're going to watch a very interesting example called organ jet, and you see what organ jet is for yourself.
Depending on which donor service area you live in, the chances of you getting a liver or a kidney can be vastly different. And I knew that there were many private jets lying around in this country. There's 18,000 jets that are utilized less than 40 or 50%. So the idea I came up with was to say, well, why don't I create a spot market so that if somebody wants to go from Boston to Pittsburgh, within 3 hours, we can get them a jet. They can list in Pittsburgh, get their transplant here, and it's not going to be that costly. Let's say it's $10,000 a flying hour, right? So it's about an hour and a half. So for $15,000, I'll save your life. Then I started thinking, can we actually make it free? I started talking to insurance companies and I said, look, you guys pay for dialysis. It's $120,000 a year. What if you pay $20,000? $15,000 for the plane and $5,000 to get listed in second place. But it saves a year of dialysis of your patients. So you pay $20,000 to potentially save $120,000. They're like, sure, we'll do it. So now the patient, if it's insured, has zero out of pocket. What I thought was just a, vacuum.
So very simple storyline. Okay? So there are people, there are donors, and a liver or a kidney has to be transplanted, I think, within 3 or 4 hours of it being harvested. There are regulations which don't allow the organ to be transported between states, because otherwise there would be a rampant black market for organs. So you can't take an organ to the patient. So he said, I'll take the patient to the organ. But if you wait to catch a flight might be after 6 hours. And by that time, the organ is useless. So he says, there's a private jet waiting for you at your airport. And it costs whatever it explains it costs. There are so many private jets in the US, they are lying idle. I'll create a pool and it'll cost. Simple. And then he goes on to say that, well, it's not just for the rich, because if you have insurance, actually insurance company is happy to foot the bill because it actually saves them money. Instead of paying for your dialysis, they will pay you for transplant. And so nice, simple way of explaining what am I doing and why what am I doing makes sense. Why will it work? So that's a very nice example of why. So the question to you is, when you are talking about your own story, we'll come to the digital when we come to the digital, but in your world, the story will come first, right? You have to have a story to tell. Have you established to your audience why is it important for them to care in simple words? And have you established in simple words what is the solution? And then comes the question of who is the hero in your story? Every story needs a hero. Everybody wants to listen to a story with a hero. One of the things we often see is that there's a tendency to make your beneficiary your hero. And however noble that might sound, your beneficiary is not often your hero. Your hero is you, your organization, your partner, your field worker, who is actually acting to change the situation. Now, we all know that it is not an independent effort, and therefore, to that extent, your beneficiary is a co-hero. And we'll delve more into detail when we get into a story framework known as the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. But you will have your beneficiary and the community as part of your storyline as a co-hero. But just a word of caution here, why I'm bringing this out is you have to have a balanced view of who your hero is, because to your audience is not stupid. To say that I went and then magically the farmers got together and they went out of poverty may sound very, I am community focused. But I will ask, so, I mean, what was that magic? And what was your role? And unless you elaborate your role, unless you're able to establish yourself as a key catalyst, as a key leadership role, then why should the donor or the reader even empathize with you? So it can't be one or the other. So have to take a balanced view, and we'll take examples of that. Now, in this thing, the Societal Thinking Initiative is a very interesting job they do. So for them, the change maker is the hero. If you will go to their website, you will find their heroes are their partners. So all of 70, 80 different organizations who have an affiliation with societal platform or a platform commons or a echo is part of that initiative. They will do podcasts, they will do webinars, they'll do interviews, they will do write-ups and blogs, all for the purpose of promoting the partner network. And they're very clear in their storyline, the hero is the change maker. In your storyline, you have to be clear who is your hero. Is it your field worker? Is it some community leader? Is it somebody? And just avoid the tendency to have sole focus on the beneficiary. Have a shared focus on the beneficiary. Let's take a pause at this point in time. Let's have a few questions coming up. And then we'll move to the next part about how do you stitch your story. And then we'll do the third part, how will data help you in your story. We can have questions on the chat window. All right, so we'll proceed in the absence of any questions at this point in time. We'll move on. Let's move on to the topic of what is it that you can turn into a story. So, a variety of topics. Right? So, your own journey as a social entrepreneur. You absolutely should turn that into a story. People need to understand what your motivations, what your organization's motivations are. Why are you doing what you are doing? Your partners and people, right? The people who believe in you, bring out their story. Everybody has a backstory. Story about your cause, story about your beneficiaries, your volunteers, your field workers, your successes, your failures. And it's just a big, like a indicative list. But for people who say storytelling is an art, I tell them no, storytelling is about discipline. So I would actually sit down, on a whiteboard and list these, at least these 6 categories we've said, and start listing out what is it that you can tell, what stories you can really tell under each of these. And you will find that, you have a plethora, wide variety of messages to give out there. We'll now dive into 2 frameworks, which very popular frameworks. I personally use both of them a lot. We'll start with the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. And then we'll talk about the hero's journey. And then we'll see what the structure of these 2 frameworks are and how do you use them to stitch a story together. So I learned about the story of self, the story of us, the story of now by the creator of the framework itself, a gentleman by the name Marshall Gans. I had the fortune of learning from him at Harvard last year. Satyam and I attended a course at the Kennedy School of Governance, and where Marshall taught us about story, largely about building public narratives using story. So let's see what this self, us, and now is, and why they need to come together for anybody to really pay attention to. So the story of self is really your story. It's about who you are. Why are you doing what you are doing? What are your values? What has been your journey? What has been your experience? So why did I leave London to go to the village? I didn't talk about it. Perhaps I can, share. But that adds authenticity. That helps. What was my experience when I lived in the village for 2 years? What worked? What did not work? What did I learn out of it? What is the value? What was my value system that led me to there? did it evolve after living 2 years in the village and working with farmers? How am I applying it today? That's the story of self. The story of self is very, very important for the other party to build trust in you. Unless they know you, they will not listen to what you have to say. So, and people, and this has to be a real story, right? You can't make it. And it is not a literary competition going on. You write it in simple words or make a simple video. But that's the story of self. The story of us focuses the attention on the community, who you are working for, and essentially the overlap of what are the values that matter to the community and matter to you. What has been, how does your experience relate to the community's experience? Why the community is in the place it is, and what the community should do to get out of that place. That's the story of us. The more the overlap and in terms of values, experiences, and actions, decisions is there in the story of self and the story of us, the more the community will trust you more, which you are working in the field forever, so you know your community. But even third parties, your readers, your donors, supporters, volunteers, CSR partners, when they see the synergy between your story and the community story, that's when they appreciate that you are the right person to solve the problem. Otherwise, many times people can say, Prashant is a techie. What business does he have to work with farmers? So that's where, for me, my story of living in the village for 2 years, or for that matter, spending at least 100 days a month in a village for the last 10 years, 100 days in a year to spend in villages for the last 10 years, that gives me, that keeps the story of self alive. And that's when you talk to people, people are willing to listen to you. That why is it that, Prashant even has any reason to be talking about working with farmers? If you don't talk about story of us without talk, and you talk about story of self, but don't talk about story of us, you are being arrogant. You are trying to be, within quotes, hero, and asking people to follow you. And you will find this in many places where you're not able to relate. So, a lot of technocrats today in the country, a lot of people, right? So, a lot of social tech initiatives you will see coming up. And many times we look at them with skepticism. A lot of other initiatives, and largely because the people who are bringing them to the table, you're not able to relate. Why is this person doing it? They must have some bad reason, some motivation. What's their motivation? Why are they doing? Are they going to cheat us? So that, and at bare minimum, people will perceive you as being ki ye to hero ban raha. So nobody likes people who want to, play the hero. Being the we'll talk about the hero's journey, but that's a completely different thing. People want collaboration. People want, humility in your story. And therefore, very important to focus on story of self and the story of us, and not just the story of self. Then you're like, I have come to save the world. I am, the best thing God created to remove poverty from the world. Nobody wants to listen to that. The third is the story of now, which basically answers the question, why now? Okay, we know poverty has existed forever. We know farmer distress has existed forever. So why should we, what is so important about today that we need to act? The story of now is about creating the incentive and communicating the reasons why we have to act now. And that's a story of, maybe increasing challenges. That's a story of opportunity, story of time running out, story of choice, story of hope. And telling why all of this translate into today. Why is today the best time to act? That's the story of now. So, and it's not very difficult to stitch together. If you're working in education, right? So you know what your intervention is very good. You've answered the why should people care? What is my intervention? And who is my hero? And now ask yourself, right? So what is my backstory, my organization's backstory? What's my community story? How do the two stitch? And why now? And you'll have a very compelling story to tell. Now, few things to keep in mind when you talk about the story of self or even the story of us. We should not only talk about the challenges. We often talk about the challenge was there and then solution was made. Very important to bring the choices out. What were the choices you made? Not all choices will work out, but people want to listen to your choices. It gives them a sense of agency. It tells them that if they are betting on your project and you tell them you did this and that did not work and it set you back by 1 year, but then you rebounded and did something else, introduce some other intervention in the school, for example, and then this was the outcome. They know that A, it's a real story, and B, that you have resilience. Right? So some things will work, some things will not work, but as an organization, you have the ability to go on. And people like to place bets on people who have resilience. So if you only talk about challenges, then it sounds like a victim story. If you only talk about success, it becomes a little unreal and you're not able to tell the other party that you have resilience. So focus on this thing. Now, the word of caution that just having a good story is not enough. You do need a strategy to have a campaign. So you have a very strong narrative. It'll mobilize people. It'll move people to action. It'll move people to conviction, to belief, to tears and emotions, everything. But they still have to hear it. So you do need a campaign strategy, and that's where digital can really help in reaching people out, which we will talk about in a few minutes from now on your digital strategy for the thing. So I'm going to take a pause. There's a very important framework. So before I jump down into Hero's journey, let's take a pause and hear some reflections or get some questions on the story of us, the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. Anyone would like to share, in their own organization, how would the causes that you are addressing, how would the story of self, story of us, story of now will correlate in whatever your day work is?
You can also directly unmute and share, or if you all want, raise your hand. We've enabled that option as well.
See, storytelling is a participative process. So it'll be really nice to hear, and it's also a thing of practice. To hear from at least few participants, if they were to use this framework to put their story out there, what would it look like? That's the advantage really we have of having so many people together. All right, so I'll move on. It almost feels like it's a post-lunch session. It's not a post-lunch session. It's a post-lunch plus 2 hour session. Okay. Now, the hero's journey is a very, very standard framework to frame your narrative. There are thousands of stories you will see out there that are broadly based on the hero's journey narrative, on the hero's journey framework. And I'd encourage you to read more about it on your own and try to frame, whoever your hero is, and you'll find it's a very so the broad frame of the hero's journey is the hero is living in the so-called ordinary world, which is business as usual, as is situation in the M&E world baseline assessment, right? So you are there, and then there is a call, which in the literary world they'll call the call of adventure, but it's a call to action. So in my case, the call was when I was drinking coffee. The call was, what are you doing about it? And me saying, I'm helping the rich get richer. That was my call. Then there is generally a refusal to the call. So this happened in 2008. It took me 2 years to resign and go to the village. So there'll be a refusal of the call, and then you'll meet your mentor. Yeah. Am I audible? I just lost connection for a second. I just want to check if I am still audible.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Is my screen visible? No,
I
screen
think
is not. Okay, now it should be visible. So then you cross the threshold. You take an action, and then the journey really starts becoming more interesting. So you have different tests happen, small, big. You make friends, you make enemies, people support you, people hate you, and you approach the big, the big challenge. Somewhere in between, you would have in the tests, what also happens that you would have done something, it would have worked, and based on that success, you would have tried to do something big, and you would fail, and in doing that, you will embarrass your village, your friends, your family, something like that. You will put everybody to shame, and then you will gather yourself again and walk. And so the ordeal will happen, some reward will happen, the road back, the resurrection is where you will put yourself together, and then you will win the final battle, and so on. Now, if you were actually to put the journey of your organization through this framework, you will realize a lot of it fits in. all of us have gone through calls, doing some things, refusing some things for various reasons, finding guidance, doing small things, doing big things, failing. In doing failing, often letting down people who had trusted us, wasting resources, wasting project money, um, and then we gather ourselves together and we prepare for the big fight, and then we win. So enough research has shown that this format of a story, everybody loves to hear. And there are so many analyses done. You take a Ramayana, you take a Mahabharata, you take some big other king story, you take Jesus' story, you take most religious stories are on this. Most movies you will find, whether it's Avengers or Superman or whether all of those will follow this pattern. It's a sure short way for you to captivate your reader's attention. And therefore, I will really encourage that you should experiment with this format. And so should you with the story of us, the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. Keep that as a broad philosophy that you have to cover those three dimensions and use this to write your story, the actual narrative. With this, let's do some more video viewing. So we'll watch a couple of ads. The reason we are going to see these ads is that these ads are seemingly nothing what the product is about. In your case, your product is your intervention, but the ad is completely different. And if you were to look at, we'll see one by Google and one by Lifebuoy. So neither the CEO of Google nor the CEO of Unilever would talk about these issues in their internal company meeting or in public. But this narrative as if captures the entire essence of the organization. So I'm going to play the first one now.
ये मैं, ये यूसुफ लंगोटिया यार सी मेरा। लाहौर में हमारे घर के सामने एक बड़ा बाग था। उस बाग का गेट बाबा आदम के जमाने। रोज शाम को हमने वहाँ पतंगे उड़ानी और उसके बाद जाके यूसुफ के दुकान से झझरिया चुरा के खानी।
झझरिया?
और मेरा साहब नमस्ते।
नमस्ते, मेरी पोती मुंबई वाली।
और बेटे क्या हाल चाल है? बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूद फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे।
हेलो अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
फजल स्वीट्स?
हाँ जी। दादाजान, दिल्ली से किसी की कॉल है।
हेलो,
यूसुफ अंकल?
कौन?
जी मैं सुमन बोल रही हूँ दिल्ली से, आपके बचपन के दोस्त बलदेव जी की पोती। याद है बचपन में आप दोनों झझरिया चुरा के खाते थे?
बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूद फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे। एक पतंग सा उड़ता था परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, एक दौर था मन मन मोर था।
पार्टीशन के वक्त हम रातों रात हिंदुस्तान आ गए।
दादू?
यूसुफ दी बड़ी याद आंदी।
एक दौर था मन मन मोर था
भैया थोड़ा जल्दी।
मन मोर हाँ जी कौन हैप्पी बर्थडे यारा यूसुफ वो यूसुफ वो तेरे पल्लू यूसुफ यार
So why does this ad work? Anybody wants to share? It's a ad about technology. It doesn't say the word technology anywhere. And similarly, the next one we watch. Anybody wants to hazard a guess? Sorry, someone was saying something. All right. So we'll move on to the last leg.
There are a couple of comments coming on the chat.
Sorry.
There are a couple of comments coming on the chat.
Yes, it triggers an unfulfilled emotion. Absolutely. Absolutely.
This ad tells about how human emotions can be solved with the help of technology.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the noteworthy thing, the thing I would like to leave with you is the ad is centered on emotion. Technology is secondary in the ad. Now, if you were to think about Google, right, the technology is their intervention, it's their product. So ask yourself that when you are communicating your story, are you all talking about I am so and so NGO, this is what I do, this is how I do, etc., etc., or are you communicating? Are you triggering? Beautifully said, right? It triggering, Janani said, an unfulfilled emotion. So in your reader, in your donor, in your partner heart, is your story triggering an unfulfilled emotion? Let's see another one and see, and this has a lot more data to it. This one is tech. The second one talks about data just as well. Called Help a Child Reach 5, an ad by Lifebuoy.
ஆளொரு மேனியும் பொழுதொரு வண்ணம் என் மகன் வளருகிறான் உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் தாயும் தந்தையும் விரும்புவதெல்லாம் ஒன்னேதானுங்க ஐயா ஒன்னேதானுங்க கண்ணுக்கு கண்ணான தான் பெத்த பிள்ளை துள்ளி விளையாடியே மனதை மகிழ செய்யணுங்க மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க மகிழச் செய்யணுங்க தெய்வம் தந்த செல்வமையா நான் பெற்ற செல்வமையா ஆரோக்கியமும் அறிவும் பெற்று வளர்ந்துட்டானையா மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோம் ஐயா நாமே மனம் மகிழ்ந்தோம் ஐயா இந்த மகிழ்ச்சியின் வேதனை எதுவும் மறந்திடும் ஐயா ஐயா நாளொரு மேனியும் பொழுதொரு வண்ணம் என் மகன் வளருகிறான் உள்ளங்களிலே இன்பம் பெருகிட மனதில் நிறைகின்றான் மனதில் நிறைகின்றான்
मेरा बच्चा 5 साल का हो गया।
इतना सब 5 साल में कौन सी बड़ी बात है?
बड़ी बात है मैडम, ये गुंडप्पा का पहला बच्चा है जो 5 साल की उम्र तक पहुंचा है।
क्या?
Let's spend a few minutes on analyzing this ad. So, why does this ad work? Yes, sir. Sankalp.
Hi, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I think first of all, the suspense, what is actually happening, the curiosity, the mystery behind the whole campaign. So there is sequence going on, and later on we get to know about the whole issue. So there is and also most of the ads means if it's related to an NGO, especially what happens is like most of the times it's issue based. First of all, they talk about the issue and then move on the process. So this is somehow different in that.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So intrigue, right? See, at the end of it, so I've recently joined a book club, and I've read. This is my 4th month, so we all read a book and then we discuss. We meet once a month and discuss the book. So the first book was total pulp fiction, useless but masala book. They call Little Fires Everywhere. It is whatever. But and I picked up the book, I couldn't put it down. Something is constantly happening. There's intrigue, curiosity. Whereas the other 3 were much more serious books, and I somehow finished them. One was on climate change, one was on degrowth, one was on geography, implications of geography on economics. So interest, right? At the end of it, you have to make it interesting, make it different. And chotu things like that ant. Would it have made a material difference if they did not put the ant in the story to the messaging? What do you think, Sakal?
Sorry, ant.
Right. So this, when Gundappa is walking, then he pauses. He's about to put his hand on an ant.
Okay.
and then right. So then he almost falls, and then he manages to balance himself and avoid putting his hand on the ant.
I think it's respecting the life because he has seen so much with death.
Right.
If I can, that's
True,
my
true.
look on kind of.
Yeah, and that also, and maybe so it could be that I actually think that maybe it is just breaking the monotony of the walking. So they wanted to make the walk long to build the suspense, but you will get bored if you're just walking. So once they show the ant, once they will show that this lady has started to sprinkle water, once this city girl will ask a question, and so on. So they've broken the walk into. So these are there's a world of stories out there, and I think you should see for yourself what is working and why, and ask yourself that is my story, am I making it interesting? Because in the absence of that, you will write the story, you will make a video, you will write a blog, nobody will read it. So there's wealth of this thing. So with this, I'll now move on to the next part. 1 second. We'll now get into some simple techie stuff on so a nice reckoner based on some research we did on what are the formats and ways in which you can decide to frame your story, what's the cost of making it, and what is the audience preference and what is the applicability in different situations. So there is video, small videos, 30-second, 60-second videos. There are podcasts, often in interview formats. Webinars, we are having one right now. Live events, you throw an event and you have people collaborate. We could have done this instead of a webinar, could have also digital event or a physical event. Images and charts, small cartoons, images with some data points, some message. And I'm sure all of us remember, Arkin Narayan's cartoons and so on. And you see on Twitter, on LinkedIn, other forms, many places, you will find one small image with 4 or 5 words and 1 data point, conveys a lot. Blogs, which is long form text, short form text, just 1 sentence, 2 sentences to evoke a thought. And long form videos, of course. Now, and then we've tried to contrast with them whether audience likes it, or are they applicable in all situations. So a webinar, you are investing 1.5 hours of your time. That's a lot of time. It's a very big commitment for all of you to invest 1.5 hours. And that makes a webinar not such a high audience preference, but a medium audience preference. Cost, however, is very low. Anybody who has access to a Zoom call, and if you have something interesting to tell, you bring it. Video making is very expensive. Short videos, people love it. But it will cost you anywhere starting 1 lakh rupee a minute to make a video. Any semi-professional this thing. So, which people will be able to watch. And it will take a lot of your intellectual energy to work with the agency to refine it and everything. Having said that, should you have 2-3 videos in your organization that convey your message, your ask, your roadmap, your vision in the same degree of finesse, like the Google ad or the Unilever ad, or yes, you should. I think it's worth the investment to have at least 2-3 small videos which you can reuse again and again to convey this thing, because people will watch a 1.5-2 minute video, take a lot from it. On a regular basis, we believe use blogs to convey thought leadership. And these are not your project status report, right? You have to take a position in the sector. If you work in education, then you have to talk about the challenges and the solutions, not just about what you are doing, but what the sector is going through and what will change the Indian education system, what will rationalize things, what will make it more, whether more vocational training is needed, less vocational training is needed, NEP is good, NEP is bad. Will people find jobs in the AI world if we continue to doing the same curriculum in rural India? Blah, blah, blah. So many things. Take a position. Nobody is interested in knowing what you do. People are interested in bigger things, right? So they will, of course, you have to slip it in your whole thing. Like Steve Jobs used to say that every speech I give is actually an ad for Apple. But he never spoke about Apple. He always spoke about bigger things, but somewhere it will be slipped in and you'll end up feeling great about that. Look at Lifebuoy. Look at Google. They didn't, Google, you're using the Google app all the time. Yes, Uncle.
So you said that means put your opinion means generally and as well as organizational point of view. So in that case, if our opinion does not match with the donors' vision or whatever the purpose may be, then what shall we do then?
Interesting, right? So I think I would say that in your opinion, Shash, also you have to be careful.
Yeah, that's the
because you have to.
Yeah,
so
we generally face that always when we make some post or we communicate something. We always face that.
See, also you will have partners, right? So suppose you are you may have an activist organization who is a partner. You can write and give it to them to publish it on their website.
Okay.
So it's not about everything has to be in your website, but you're building a position. You're contributing to building a position in the sector, and everybody respects people who are trying to change the sector. And today's donor world is all about scale and systems change. So when you share things about that can make things good for everybody, people like hearing that, especially donors and especially big donors like to hear that, as opposed to I will train 20 more people. Then the cost of training each person is 4,000 rupees. So, but if you're talking about the core issues and how your model is scalable and how the ecosystem will evolve and all of those things, people like that. Do use images, charts, graphs, cartoons, drawings, photographs with small captions to convey important messages. Something people can digest in 15 seconds. It's easy for you to make, easy for the other party to consume. I had subscribed long back to some Harvard management tip of the day. It's a 3-line statement that comes every day. I read it. Once in a while, I like it. Once in a while, I don't like it. But the fact is that brand name is there in my mind because every day I open that email. So it's important for for the other party to recognize you by name. And these are a great way, images, charts, small blogs, small texts. Low investment on your side, high, but don't state the obvious. Make it interesting. Make it interesting for the other party. Then, in terms of channel, when your reader is another business, right? A donor, an institutional donor, or a investor, or a CSR head, or somebody. The best channels are for you to have your own website. So you have a blog section, thought leadership section, article section on your website. Make YouTube videos, LinkedIn and Instagram. These are great B2B channels to post on. And you absolutely must post on it. There's no reason not to. We all have stories to tell. In the B2C world, Instagram and Google Maps, you saw, right? How in the Google ads, so much of Google Maps presence is there. When people search for you, Google, your presence on Google Maps and Google this thing goes a long way in making you discoverable. Have a good entry on the Google ecosystem. Brings to the role of data. Use data to establish facts whenever you're talking about a new problem. Even if it's an old problem, use data to illustrate the magnitude. For example, Bangalore generates 6,000 tons of garbage every day. The humongous amount of garbage. Average life expectancy of a waste picker who's working on that garbage is 39 years. Infant mortality is 33%. 1 in 3 children die in less than 5 years of age. They have over 20 known biological diseases they capture from working in garbage, and over 42 chemical-induced skin diseases and respiratory diseases because of the exposure to the chemicals in the garbage. These are data points. But where have they come from? Sectoral research. You go sit down on Google, you'll get this data point. But do that. Sometimes people don't understand what is 6,000 tons. Especially if you say India generates 65 million tons of garbage every day. Nobody understands what it means. So use comparatives to help people understand, because people don't understand big numbers. So if I say 6,000 tons of garbage means 1,200 trucks leave the city every day, go to villages, dump their garbage and come back to the city every day. People can imagine. Now imagine a queue of 1,200 trucks. If they were to stand back to back, it will go from MG Road till Yalanka. So people understand, right? So you'll help people understand. If you were to pile up the whole global garbage of 5 years, it'll make a hill taller than Mount Everest. And so on and so forth, right? So you have to use comparatives in your data. Where will you get such data? You will get it from the sectoral research. Now, what will come from your own digital systems? People love unit economics data, unit intervention, to know the cost, timeline, effort of your intervention. For example, it takes investment of 15,000 rupees to convert a rag picker from a scavenger to a uniformed recycling manager. They are able to recover this 15,000 rupee, which they can take a loan from the bank and repay it in 9 months. This is our model that will convert a rag picker to a home composting manager. Here is the picture, here is the business model, 15,000 rupees, 9 months ROI. It takes 1 hour of volunteer tuition to help increase students' score by 1. So for every hour of volunteering, I spend digital volunteering teaching maths to a child, his or her score goes by 1. Very powerful statements. If you are trying to mobilize volunteers, where will this data come from? From your digital systems. You should have a way to measure volunteer hours, and you should have a way to measure the child outcome, learning outcome using some assessment. And then you can very easily establish. So some basic digital systems for that. Then M&E data to communicate your impact, right? So if you communicated the effectiveness now, so you'll say last year we worked with 8,000 volunteers who taught a 30-hour total, and the student learning outcome went from average of 25 marks to 55 marks for 12,000 students speaking Tamil. So this will come from your M&E system and your assessments and whatever you're doing. So that's part of your digital system. And you need this to communicate. When Lifebuoy said so many million people die of diarrhea and 1/3 of this thing and that thing, they have M&E data, measurement data to show that. Also, what I have found donors start to know is data regarding your extended reach. Not just, so they are not just interested in you as an NGO, they want to know, are you connected in the broader ecosystem? Do you have partners? Do you have access to other donors? Do you have access to resources, to volunteers? Are you a scalable entity? So then, if you are able to, for example, make a statement, collectively we have access to 8,000 volunteers who have crowdfunded 8 crore, which we use to work with 8,000 students. Whereas we as an NGO are only 20 people and we create this massive leverage. So people want to hear story about leverage that you are hitting above your weight, because it's a resource constrained world. So when you are saying that you have access to extended resources, people A, feel confident that you are networked and scalable, and B, that you can mobilize resources. and people like such people. So in summary, get your narrative in place, use the why, what, who framework to establish, the cause, the empathy, the intervention, and simple words. The hero, use the two frameworks we spoke about, the story of you, the story of the community, and the story of now, to establish credibility, establish emotion, and use those later. You can rewatch these videos and see how these people are using these frameworks and the hero's journey to build some realness in your storytelling. Get data from the field. Establish some basic M&E systems, basic data capture systems from the field. People love to hear stories from the field, as if they have gone to the village. Do interviews with the beneficiaries, take photos, get impact data. But do remember that use the data to substantiate your story. Data is not the story. Data is aiding the story. Data will help you to communicate that my story is a true story. But focus on the story. Have somebody in the organization whose job is to curate stories. It's a skilled job, so train them on storytelling techniques. There are a lot of courses out there, free ones, reading, and it's very instinctive. Storytelling, once you do that, don't have to spend 1 lakh rupee in training somebody on storytelling. Our grandmothers have all told stories. It's very human nature to be able to tell a story. Just be aware and use practice internally. Before you take a piece of media out there initially, play it internally and get real feedback. Was it interesting? Was it boring? If it was boring to your own employees, it will be boring to the donor and it will be boring to the general public. Right? So do that test till you are confident that I can, hit it. And get some basic IT system that lets you get stories from the field, like photo, video, interview from beneficiary, field photo, etc. And some basic execution and impact data. Resources spent, impact made kind of a thing. These itself will help you stitch together very nice narratives. And and for any other this thing, feel free to reach to us if you want to continue the dialogue on the topic of story, or in general on the topic of digital transformation. Happy to engage with you guys. Take a pause now. Let's have some last set of questions. And special thanks to Janani and Sankalp for adding little, a conversation to this thing. But I sincerely say, pursue the story. It's very rewarding. It'll help you also get a lot of clarity. The ability to tell your story in simple words also means that you are clear on what you are doing.
Thanks, Prashant. So we have a couple of minutes before we close. Happy to take any questions. We can take a couple of them. Yeah, just opening the floor now in case any of you all want to share your experiences, want to share feedback, or even ask any questions. I am parallelly just going to launch our poll. Would request you all to kindly vote. It will help us conduct more such sessions. Yeah, and also to share with you all, we are having another session on the new data protection law. It's going to take place next week. I will just paste the link to the event on the chat. Please do sign up in case you're interested. We are opening the floor for any questions.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Sankar.
So sometimes when we are creating some stories, in that case, some issues of the past, maybe like some entity that government created was not up to the mark, but we cannot mention it. Means it has happened that my managers have recommended that don't mention it. Because of those means we can have means it can be we can be liable to the government. So in that case, do we need to hide it or somehow, or again we have to send to a different third party that kind of narration?
Good point. See, the thing is, before you think about this question about how to hide it or give it to a third party or do whatever, the question to ask yourself is that by stating that fact, will it make a positive difference to your cause or not? Then I think the answer will be clear as to how do you want to proceed with it. Because see, often what happens is that we find something wrong, big or small. We have this feeling that I have to talk about. And sometimes it's the right thing, sometimes you ignore it and just keep focused on what you are doing. So it's even more fundamental question than whether I share it in my story or in my communication or not, because there's only those many battles you can pick up. So you have to, as a sector, anyway, if the whole world itself was fully supportive, still if you say you are working on poverty alleviation or you are working on education, it's not an easy thing to do. So on top of it, so moral of the story is, don't make needless enemies. There are enough real problems anyways. And ask yourself whether some piece of information you want to publish, popularize, build a narrative on, whether it will do you, how much benefit it will do to the cause you're working on. And I guess the answer will come. Then listen to your heart after that.
And also, so most of the ads we showed, there means like maybe they are actors, maybe most of them.
Yes,
so,
they are.
So because my organization work with rural India, so in that case, if we want to make some ad, so is it means do we involve them? Means,
no, you do. So I forgot, I should have shared one more. If you can just drop me a mail, I'll share you some videos we had made with rag pickers.
Okay.
So they are shot by professionals, but they are all actual rag pickers who then became recycling managers. And so they're not actors.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Radhamani.
Thanks, Prashant. I think in case we do not have any more questions, we can close. Yeah, but thank you all for the feedback that you all have shared, and as well as interacting, engaging with us, and being a part of our sessions. The sessions we conducted with Platform Commons was almost there were 3 different sessions, and thanks a lot for all the insights, both Prashant and Satyam. And as I've just put on chat, we will share the recording and presentation with all post the session. Please feel free to also reach out to our speakers. We can reshare Prashant's email ID. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. And we look forward to also interacting with you in our next session on data protection. So the link to that has also been shared on chat. But we'd like to thank you all again and see you all for our next session.
Thanks, everyone. See you around. Bye-bye.